Hello, viewers, and welcome to Spotlight. This is Hope TV, where you look and live. And here on Spotlight, we bring to you different conversations that answer questions on matters that are affecting our society, our community. And one of those issues is definitely the Kenya power, the power factor. You have so many questions, I'm sure, and we are on this program happy to be joined by Kevin Sang, who is the Chief Communications Officer at Kenya Power. Now, that should make it interesting. The mention of Kenya Power.
Have been economically viable for Kenya Power. Remember, Kenya Power is owned partly by government, 51%, and we also have the private shareholding at 49%. There are areas which would not make economic sense for Kenya Power to distribute electricity to by virtue of the uptake, the initial cost of connecting those customers. It will take us years to recover the investment. And what the government did was to form a different entity which does distribution to those far-flung areas and more specifically rural areas. So the company is called the Rural Electrification Authority. And we also have the regulator, which is the Energy Regulatory Commission, which is in charge of basically pricing of electricity and also regulating the sector. We are in a very highly regulated business environment. We don't determine the prices ourselves. It's the regulator that determines, sits down and looks at all the needs for the country and also uses a formula to determine how much we should bill customers on their monthly bills. And lastly, but not the least, is ministry, which is a policy maker and also provides guidance in the sector. Okay. I think that is, in a nutshell, the different players within the power sector.
Okay. Yeah. It's quite expansive
when
you think about it.
Yeah.
Because people associate anything electricity with Kenya Power. But when you break down all these institutions that are independent in a way, that are also playing a role in the whole power sector, energy sector, as we can call it, I think sheds some good light. It's not just Kenya Power.
It does.
But in the minds of everyone, it's Kenya Power. Whatever it is Kenya Power. I think Kenya Power needs to know that. Anything power, Kenyans know Kenya Power.
It's Kenya Power.
Now, I know that in the midst of all these associations and institutions, there is the specific mandate of Kenya Power as an institution. Okay. Would you articulate that for us?
Yes, we have a specific mandate, and our mandate is basically to buy electricity in bulk from the generating companies, from KenGen and IPPs.
Yes.
And then
you can also use
independent power producers.
Exactly,
yes,
because
independent.
IPPs, our viewers may want to know IPPs.
Yeah, they would not know.
IPPs, IDPs, they kind of close together. So
yeah, so we buy electricity from independent power producers and KenGen, and we sell it to you, the customer, for profit. Yeah, so that is the overall mandate of Kenya Power.
And that's the place of pain. When you sell it to us for profit. And we'll get to that shortly.
Yes. Yeah, so that is a key mandate. Of course, we're also the system operator, meaning that being the system operator, we also determine the demand that the country requires, and before we source for that electricity. That mandate is still, as a system operator, it falls square on us. And pretty much that sums it up. What our mandate is basically to buy electricity in bulk and then sell it to you for profit.
Okay.
Yes.
And I'm sure that the whole power sector, in line with Kenya, talking now specifically with Kenya Power, has undergone a lot of transformation over the years.
Yes.
What would you say have been the key milestones that Kenya Power has achieved, that you can say, look, we were not here, now we're here.
We're here.
We were here, but now we're even higher. The key milestones that you can bring to our viewers.
First is to say that with Kenya Power is rich in history. When you look at the history of this country, Kenya Power has always played a role throughout. From the nascent stage, or from the initial stage in the formation of this country, from the pre-colonial period or colonial period up until past the independence and today, up to today, the company is close to 100 years. In 2022, we should be celebrating 100 years of existence in the market. And it all started by a ruler in Zanzibar. His name is Said Bagash. He's the one that brought the first generator, brought it from the United Kingdom and brought it to Zanzibar. That little generator was later brought to Kenya, that is specifically in Mombasa, and that is how the power company started way back in 1898, and it became the East African Power Lighting Company in 1922. and it was listed in the Nairobi Stock Exchange in 1954. And as East African Power Lighting, at that time we had a regional role because of the East African community. Our market was Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania. But after the collapse of the EAC, the company was rebranded because now we're only handling the Kenyan market, and it became the Kenya Power Lighting Company in 1981. In 1997, the company was unbundled. Now, by unbundling, we mean it was split into two. So we had the Kenzen, okay, so it was hived off from Kenya Power so that they can focus on generation of electricity, and then Kenya Power was to concentrate on transmission and distribution. Then later on in 2006, REA was formed, which is a Rural Electrification Authority. 2008, KETRAC was formed to also do the transmission component. 2010 is when we rebranded to Kenya Power because of all the changes that have happened and because of the direction that the country was taking, and also in view of a lot of the changes in the regulatory environment. So we had to rebrand so that we can now focus concentrate the business on the distribution and transmission.
Okay.
Components.
Now, as you talk about rebranding,
yes,
and being part of the Kenyan journey,
yes,
right now, the dominating narrative in politics and in development in the country is the Big Four agenda.
Yes, yes.
Where does Kenya Power find itself in the Big Four agenda?
Kenya Power plays a lead role. We are the enabler for socio-economic development. Electricity plays an enabling role. Without electricity, you talk about all the beautiful things that you're going to do as a country, but if you don't have affordable, competitively priced electricity, you don't have reliable electricity, you don't have quality electricity, all the talk of development will not happen. And is for that simple reason that the government identified the reason for pumping or attracting investment in the energy sector, so that we can build up robust infrastructure so that we're able to support the development agenda, including the Big Four agenda that has been mooted by the government in the recent past. And of course, when you look at manufacturing role, for example, where electricity plays a very critical role. For us to manufacture, we have to have sufficient electricity, we have to have competitively priced electricity, and Kenya Power plays a big role in that. Right now, we are working very closely with the Kenya Association of Manufacturers, Kenya Private Sector Alliance, and with the government, and also to look for mutually, in a mutually benefiting partnership with all the players in the manufacturing agenda who are supporting the manufacturing agenda, to ensure that they are well supported. They are well supported in that area. On the area of health, of course, when you talk of equipment that is going to be used on to facilitate health, providing health care to Kenyans, electricity plays a very critical role. You talk of agriculture, sufficiency in food production to feed the nation. We're there, we're playing a role, because without electricity, you will not be able to do mechanized farming properly. Okay, so we play a very active role in supporting the Big Four agenda.
Yeah. And we have known the dominant form of energy to be the hydropower.
Yes.
And but we've now seen a shift to windmills. We've seen a shift to geothermal.
Yes.
In terms of the future of power, do we see ourselves having the hydro part being the smaller, contributor of power generated, and then moving to these what we call more friendly and more renewable types of energy, like the ones you mentioned, windmill, geothermal?
That's a good question, Furi. The good news is that as a country, we're doing very well in terms of generation, and more specifically renewable generation, or renewable energy, part of which is hydro, geothermal, wind, Okay, right now 90% of our energy mix is renewable energy, which is very good. It puts us high up there in the ranks of in the global ranking, that we are one of the greenest countries when it comes to production of electricity. That is. And when it comes to the potential for hydro, we don't have huge potential in Kenya. Remember, hydro is also renewable energy because of, you remember how condensation for the, what happens when it comes to production of, or how
steam.
yes, how liquid or water is formed, basically, if you remember your science.
Yeah.
So hydro is renewable energy
I do remember
in the
my
strictest
science.
definition,
I
yes.
yes.
Yeah, so in this particular scenario, in our Kenyan scenario, we are not blessed, we are not endowed with a lot of hydro resources. Like DRC. DRC has huge potential. They can generate more than 10,000 megawatts of electricity using hydro sources. They have huge rivers. In Kenya, we are not blessed with that, except the River Tana, and we are almost exhausting its potential. So our shift now is more on geothermal. And we have quite huge resources, geothermal potential in Kenya, where we can generate as much as 10,000 megawatts from geothermal sources. Then
so the future is
it's more of geothermal and wind and solar.
Okay.
Yeah, more of that. We could be increasing potential on hydro from here in smaller quantities.
Because we don't have huge, or we don't have new rivers.
Yes,
you know,
we don't
so
have.
to speak, anyway.
Yeah, yeah. And then the beauty of it, Furi, maybe just to add, is that in our Kenyan scenario, we're not dependent on one particular source of power, be it hydro, because hydro is dependent on weather or the climatic conditions and the weather patterns. So in seasons where you have drought, then the hydro generation falls down, and what happens is that now then you're forced to manage the load, so that basically to have to ration the electricity, so that you're able
which
to.
Which is really something that bites us.
Absolutely, and where we are there 20 years ago, 1999, 2000, that is where we were.
And we still are in a place where we import electricity.
Very small component.
From Uganda.
Very
is it
small.
also from Ethiopia?
Ethiopia, there are plans to do an interconnector. Already work is going on. The plan is to import, we'll do a 400 kV power line, which is able to, if there is any need, we can always trade across the region from Ethiopia. Ethiopia is endowed with hydro resources. Okay, so it will fill in, because we know that hydro is also fairly cheap compared to thermal energy, for example. And Uganda is very, very small component. In fact, rather, you look at it maybe in the range of around 30 megawatts in a given month, which is very small compared to what we consume as 1,700. So that's a very small. And also sometimes we feed to them. So it's very, very small component that we use for the western side of the country.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Some time back, there was a blackout in New York City.
Yes.
And that hit the headlines. You know, like there was a blackout for, I think, a few hours.
Yes.
It was unheard of, like that there has ever been a blackout.
A blackout in the US.
But when you think about us here, we actually can write, maybe there has not been a blackout for the last month. That's amazing. That's almost, you know, in the language of the religious, it's a miracle. For the last 1 month, we've not had a blackout, you know? Do you, as Kenya Power, foresee a time when a blackout is going to be
a reality?
You know, like newsworthy?
Yes, it will happen. Only that, you know, when you look at those Western countries, what they were able to do was to invest a lot of, put in a lot of investments in creating what you call redundancies, or creating additional power lines serving a given area. For example, if you live in Buruburu, instead of one power line coming from Dandora coming to Buruburu, serving you from Buruburu, you have another one coming from Embakasi, and you have another one coming from, let's say, industrial area, and another one coming from Thika Road, so that at any given time, Buruburu has 4 alternative power lines serving it. Okay, so that is how far they have gone in when it comes to investing on their grid. And they've made those investments over so many years, perfecting it over the years. For us, Because of underinvestment in much of 1980s and 1990s, we did not put up a lot of, and that is not only on the power sector, in so many other infrastructural projects or infrastructure, in so many other infrastructural sectors. We didn't put in a lot of investments in those areas, in putting up the infrastructure, be it roads, be it telecoms and all that. So that is where we are now, the company is working very, very hard in creating those additional lines, serving communities, so that whenever there is failure on one power line serving a given area, there is an alternative line. That is what is happening in the Western. It doesn't mean that they don't have blackouts. The blackouts happen in Western countries. Only that, because you serve from 3 to 4 different points, even if one line goes off, the other 3 are able to support the demand for that given area. So they don't go off at any given time. And that is what the company is trying to do right now, creating additional feeder lines so that you lessen, minimize power interruptions.
And I
yes.
think in the course of that discussion, you've called it underinvestment.
Yes.
But other people call it monopoly, that there should be a move whereby we also have other providers of power, so that if Kenya Power is not efficient, I can shift, just like I shift from TV cable providers, I can shift from this inefficient system to a more reliable one. The conversation around monopoly and diversification, opening up of this power sector.
Really, there's when it comes to the power sector, when you look at our type of product, which is electricity, when you look at it, you're not talking of as a service that requires perhaps only airwaves, where you can put up a mast, for example, in telecom companies, where you put up a mast and that is it, you transmit wirelessly. People are able to receive the transmission from wirelessly, onto their phones. In our case, it's a cable that runs all the way from generating station continuously up to your premises or to your home. So if you talk about demonopolizing or bringing in a new player to compete with Kenya Power, you're talking of somebody who will come and put up new infrastructure parallel to what we have at Kenya Power. And that requires a lot of cash outlay. To be able to do infrastructure for Nairobi alone would cost billions and billions of shillings. And you're talking of also, you look at also the market, you look at what brings in the money in the energy sector, for example. And for example, our revenue, most of it comes from large power customers, which is 6,000 customers contribute 50% of our profit. With the rest, over 6 million customers are the ones that provide the other 50%. So there is, when you look at all those factors, you realize that it makes no sense at all to bring in another player to build a parallel infrastructure so that they can fight for the 6,000, because they will be if you bring in a private player, for example, to come in, lay up infrastructure, they will be targeting the guys who will give them the most profit, which is the large power customers, the ones who consume the most, because then you don't need a lot of resources to manage those few who give you the best return. So there is that. There are lots of things that you have to look at when it comes to opening up the business environment.
But from our experience in other sectors, opening up has always brought a lot of innovation, has brought out of efficiency, and that's really what the end consumer wants. That's what the manufacturer would want. That's what the consumer would want. So that there is, so that there is that aspect of we need to, step up. We need to, be better, and which brings us to the point, and the big question, whether why are the consumers, right, being overcharged? You find a bill that you cannot relate with. You start even looking around your house to wondering whether there's a small outfit, a small factory that has opened behind your house without knowing, because the bill you can't relate. You can't relate with this.
Even as I tackle the second question, just to go back a little on that on the demonopolization,
efficiency and
providing a new player to rival Kenya Power or to compete with Kenya Power.
It's not to rival Kenya Power. It is to give better service to the people.
Yes, you know, and by the way, competitive environment works for everybody, including Kenya Power. It is something that we would love to. The only thing that, I mean, the new energy bill provides for that. Okay, but there are so many factors that you have to consider if you're going to operationalize that. Does it mean that now Kenya Power stops being because we own the infrastructure? So then it could also be that perhaps then we take a backseat and we bring in other players to do the distribution in given regions or given communities, so that now we only are paid what you call wheeling charges, and then you have different private sector players. So that is something that they will have to consider when it comes to operationalizing that energy bill, the provisions in energy bill to open up the distribution market. Okay, so that is something that now the ministry or the government will have to guide us going forward when it comes to having people on board. Now the issue on bills. Cost of electricity is never determined by Kenya Power. You know, there is that misconception, which what I was talking about earlier on, that Kenya Power wakes up in the morning and says that I want to charge Furi 1,000 shillings for this consumption for the month of June. It doesn't happen that way. We operate in a very highly regulated environment where ERC is the one that actually determines, puts in so many factors to consider how much we should charge in a given month. Okay, and there are different things that you will have to look: how much electricity was generated from diesel, how much electricity was generated from other sources, geothermal, hydro. Put up all that, thermal also, which is diesel. So you put up all those factors, and then you come up with a unit cost. Okay, so that is a different thing. So we don't determine the prices of electricity. Second, in cases in the recent past, I remember. More in particular, if you recall, in November, December, January, our customers complained of high bills. And it's because of a system migration. We had an ICT upgrade on our systems that supports what you call customer service management system, that supports all the operations on in serving the customers. So when we did that upgrade, there was a problem on estimations, on bill estimations that happened in that period.
You know, I think as you talk about the system migration, and talk about bill estimation,
yes,
why is it that, you know, such a huge organization that has such a long history,
yes,
and that has access to so much technology today,
yes,
have to estimate a bill?
That's a good question. You know, if you look at it, first of all, to understand that question, let's see the complement of the customers that we have. We have 6.7 million customers, out of which 2 million are on postpaid. Postpaid are the ones that will come to read your meter every month. 4.5 are prepaid customers. So prepaid customers don't require these no estimations anywhere. They buy their tokens.
And they have their own issues.
Yes, right? We'll talk about that as
because there was a time when there was said to be several vendors.
I'm coming to that. I'm coming to that. Now, the issue on reading your bill, traditionally we try very much to read your meter. Now it's 100%. Before we bill you, we have to ensure that we read your meter. For the 2 million customers who are on postpaid.
You know, now what happens is it's kind of Sang. It's interesting when Kenya Power uses words like "we try to read your meter." You know, try. You know,
but there are times
try to read your meter.
There are times
should Kenya Power try to read, or should Kenya Power read the meter?
We read the meter. Actually, 95% of all the 2 million customers are read every month.
So is Kenya Power trying?
But in the 5%, the 5%. We may fail to access that meter. For example, maybe you've locked up your compound. Okay, you've refused to open the door for us to come and read your meter.
Now, the people who complain, Sang, they have their doors open.
Yes.
They have people in their homes like 24/7. So I think that this idea that Kenya Power is trying to read and it's failing, I think that...
No, it's not a failure for it. When you look at 95% meters being read, of the 2 million, you're talking of 1.9 9 million customers we read every month. That is quite an achievement. Let me tell you something. In other countries, including the Western countries where we where we want to be, customer meters are read only twice a year. Only twice a year. Twice. Sometimes once a year. Okay? But their billing regime, their tariff is fairly predictable. So that now the system, which is what we base on our estimations, is able to do a rough estimate of how much you're supposed to pay for a given period, let's say 3 months or 4 months.
When you
then
use
you
words
average.
like rough estimate, sounds like there's an algorithm.
No, it's the system. What the system does, it looks at your 3 previous bills and gives us an estimate of how much. Okay, so we don't do estimations anymore. But in other countries, there is no, most utilities don't actually read your meter every month. That is something, that is a big job to do.
So what the customers who feel they've been overcharged, what should they expect from Kenya Power?
For us, first of all, technologically, we are pushing a lot of the customers now. All new connections are on prepaid, so they don't worry about issues on estimations or coming to disconnect you because you haven't paid or because you forgot to pay your bill, or to also eliminate issues on estimations. Number one, that is on prepaid metering for all domestic customers. Secondly, is that we are just about to launch self meter reading application. You'll have it on your phone for those ones who have smartphones. If we cannot access your meter, you can actually self-read. You can actually read your meter, take a picture of the meter, send to us. It will go to our systems, and the system will generate a bill for you. So it eliminates estimations. Number 3, but you have to opt in. You have to sign up for that service. Number 3, our meter readers are working around the clock to ensure that your meters are read. That we don't bill. We don't bill on, if we haven't read the meter, we don't bill you for that month. We have to bill you on accurate readings. Okay, so that is what the company has done, and that is why we pushed it from actually an average of around 70% at the time, from back in January. Now we're doing 95%, which is quite an achievement.
So what we're hearing from you is that we should expect better days.
Yes.
And that there will be no going back to these hues and cries about this kind of bills and all that. We are watching. We're watching. And now you are also moving to the prepaid system.
Yes.
That also has had its own a lot of debates around that.
Yeah.
Can you maybe reassure the customers on prepaid that some of the issues like the response time to buying tokens and the cost of that power, because it seems to vary, in the course of the month. Can you maybe reassure the customers that this also is being decently handled in a way that will not raise moral issues?
Yes. First, we did the issues that we were facing at the time on prepaid token generation were related to the system upgrade that we were undertaking at the time, which we completed from the time. And you must have, most customers will tell you now that when they buy their tokens, they receive it at the speed of light. That is what people say, that it's even faster than the SMS on maybe say M-Pesa or Airtel Money SMS confirmation. So you're getting it faster than before. So those issues have been addressed comprehensively. The second issue on cost of electricity is all because of the nature of the tariff that we have. We have a tariff system that charges you differently based on your consumption. For example, currently between 0 and 50 units, you charge 2 shillings and 50 cents a unit. Okay, so it's called a lifeline tariff. So it's meant to support people who don't perhaps consume a lot of electricity. Then between 50 and 1,500, they are charged 12 shillings and 75 cents. So that one, so a lot of levies also come in within that tariff band. And then 1,500 and above, they are charged 21 shillings but those ones are mostly who are large power consumers and small commercial enterprises and the likes, and also domestic customers who consume beyond that range. Okay, so those ones are charged 21 shillings. But there is an ongoing discussion and an ongoing plan, and sooner or later, I think the Cabinet Secretary for Energy had made commitment, say that there is something that the government is working on to give what you call a harmonized tariff is fairly flat, that you can predict that this month we know that the cost of electricity is this. So there are no variations within that bill, within the bill. And by the way, the variations also happen because of, number one, amount of electricity that we use to generate electricity from diesel sources. Number two, amount of there are other things like now taxes, okay, your consumption, the issues on foreign or the exchange rate for the shilling against the dollar, and also inflation. Okay, so there are many things that go into a bill. Okay, and they also cause those variations that you cannot really predict how much I'm going to buy. If I buy tokens for 1,000 shillings, it gives you a different amount if you buy the same, somebody else buys it, or even if you buy it tomorrow, because of all those complexities that go, or the components that go to a given bill, which is a bit complex for an ordinary person to conceptualize.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. What the big take from this, Kevin, is that you at Kenya Power are working at the best that you can to give Kenyans, the citizens, in their homes, in their businesses, and also in the manufacturing sector, better days, lighter days.
Absolutely.
As young people would say,
absolutely lit. Yeah. Before, maybe just to close it, just to say that Kenya Power, we're really giving our best. We're not there yet. We know our customers are very demanding, and they want the better. I mean, when you hear a lot of noise, it's because the people have faith in you. They believe that you can do better. I always say that if people don't make noise concerning your business or anything that you do, it means that they have given up on you. So when we see Kenyans raising up issues in the media and public forums, it's because, or even in online forums, it's because they have faith that we can do, they believe that we can do better. And that is also what is motivating us internally, that we can do better to serve Kenyans, in serving Kenyans.
All right.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sang.
Thank you.
And as our viewers, we have heard from Kenya Power that keep raising those issues, keep raising those questions, keep up the noise is what making Kenya Power better. This has been Spotlight. Thank you for watching.